Hey, and thank you everybody for joining us. This is the first ever Paradigm Innovation event. I am the co-founder of the Paradigm Community for Innovation. And I thought I would start things off by just saying a couple of words about what the Paradigm Community is about and why we're talking with Yuu Shibata and Roman Zelichenko today. So the Paradigm Community is a community for global mobility professionals. It has a lot of immigration people in it, but it's not just for immigration people. It has a lot of lawyers in it, but it's not just for lawyers. It's for anybody in global mobility. And it is about being a better professional, basically. So it's not about learning about immigration law or any of that stuff. It's about being a better professional, being a better employer, a better employee, a better marketer, a better, better business developer, all of that type of stuff. And actually, it's kind of a little bit about being a better person too. So the innovation arm of it is we're still inventing things. That's what innovation is all about. But what we want to do is talk about things which are new, things which are exciting, things which are creative, and things which people don't understand yet. So on that track, today we thought we'd talk about digital marketing. So that's all about how to use social media and the internet and all this stuff for your small immigration practice. And when we thought about how to do that, we thought, first of all, we should talk to you because she does digital. Actually, it was her idea to start with. So she does the digital marketing for Mazzeschi, which is a very wonderful law firm in Italy, and also for the Paradigm Community itself. And obviously, we had to talk to Roman as well because he is the master of this subject and knows everything about it. So it's pretty easy for me. I'm just going to let these guys talk. So first of all, do you guys want to introduce yourselves and say a little bit about the subject?
You?
Sure. Yes. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Yuu Shibata, and I am one of the co-founders of Paradigm Community. And I'm also a full-time legal counselor at Mazzeschi Israel, which is an Italian immigration company. So about my background, well, I am specialized in European Union law, and I've been working in the immigration sector since 2018. So it can be said that I'm relatively new in the industry. So, well, today I'm here because I have so many questions about digital marketing, especially for small firms, legal firms, and consultancies. Well, even though I have a legal background, my background is all legal. And lots of my work has to do with business immigration and legal stuff related to it. But on the other hand, a big part of my work has to do also with digital marketing. And I think many of my colleagues are also in the same situation, that we're not a specialist, but we need to do some of digital marketing. So I've been studying a lot, but today I'm very excited to be here and to have the opportunity to talk to Roman. And well, I'm ready to learn.
So we were talking earlier. Oh, actually, Roman, sorry, I totally forgot about you. Introduce yourself, please. I'm like, everyone knows who this guy is, but yeah, please introduce yourself.
Of course. No, thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this conversation. It's my passion and desire to talk about digital marketing, especially within the immigration mobility space. So I'm a former immigration attorney. My background is also in legal, but formally, but I think I've loved marketing my whole life, and I've sort of been doing it my whole life. And I think the past number of years, I've actually been proactively doing it, starting my own immigration tech company, and then now running GMI Rocket, which is a digital marketing agency actually for the immigration mobility space. So it's something I'm super passionate about. LinkedIn is my, I think, forte, but of course I have an understanding of a lot of other platforms out there. And I'm excited to hear your questions and talk through it and hopefully get some comments and questions from folks who are joining and watching.
Actually, Roman, before we get into the specific questions, I have a sort of bonus question for you, which is, why do you love it so much? Like, why do you care about marketing?
I think because it's just human psychology. I always think about marketing as how you as a brand or as a professional can get someone to like or agree with you. And to me, that's just it's just interpersonal relationships, right? How do you get a crush to like you? How do you get a friend to like you? How do you get a teacher to like you? And I guess, I don't know, I'm fascinated by that. And I think that marketing is just a really broad way of creatively looking at what we provide as people or companies and how we can get others to somehow like it, whether they buy it or they tell others about it or they say something nice about it somewhere. I just find that really, really fascinating.
Yeah.
The stuff like what you provide, which could be legal services, tech services, et cetera, it almost doesn't matter. To me, it's more about the story that you present of why somebody should again like you and or buy from you or whatever it might be.
Right. And it's about connections, I think, isn't it? It's about how you connect, which I think it totally ties to immigration and why we're all doing immigration, because it's interesting to be connected to other people all around the world, you know, and to be able to make, I find it amazing to make such really personal connections with people that you've never met, you know, and then you do meet them and it's even better. But it's completely possible without having met people to really make kind of lifelong friends, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of awesome. Anyway, let's get, so you had quite a good question to start with about budgets and that sort of thing. Do you want to hit us?
Exactly. Yes. One of I think that it's a basic questions. The first one would be many like legal firms and consultancy are quite small and they don't have enough budget for marketing specialists. So what would you recommend to those firms?
So in terms of budget specifically? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, it's interesting because I think that budget actually, I think marketing strategy actually precedes, I know we had a few questions. I think marketing strategy actually precedes budget. And frankly, budget is part of the strategy. So if I want to actually take a step back from budget, because budget means you've already made a bunch of decisions regarding marketing. And now you're trying to figure out how to get the money and where the money is going to come from. But it means that a few decisions have already been made. So I think the first one to start with is actually the ultimate one, which is what's the goal here? Like, right, you as a small immigration practice or mobility practice, if you're thinking about marketing, that means something has brought you to that place of thinking about it. And you have a future vision in mind and you think marketing is going to be part of it. So my question is, what is your goal? So for example, there are a few goals that you might have. Number one might be, listen, we have a really great firm, but nobody knows about us outside of just the folks that I know. Like, I know we have great capacity, we have great professionals here, but not enough people know about us. So maybe your goal is just brand awareness. Maybe you're not looking for more clients at that time. You just want to build like sort of long-term brand awareness. Another goal might be a specific financial goal. Maybe you're saying, all right, we've grown X amount over the past few years. We want to continue to grow, and we have a target. And my goal is specifically to take on Y amount of clients or to make certain amount of revenue, per year, in addition to what you're already making. So a strict financial goal. Another goal could also be growing your team, right? We don't think about it, but when we're branding ourselves as companies, we're not just targeting our prospective clients, we're also targeting prospective employees and or partners, right? And so, yes, I understand small companies, maybe don't hire as often, but it could be a contractor, a freelancer, maybe eventually you'll want to take someone on, maybe a partner as well. So not necessarily someone in your business, but someone parallel to your business between whom you might share clients. Everyone sees your content, right? And different content has different goals in mind. So I think about have those goals in mind first before you start even thinking about a strategy. Okay, so once you figure out what your goals are, assuming you're talking about your target customer, right? Then you have to think about who is that target customer, right? Are you working on business immigration? So are your target customers corporates, HRs, right? In-house legal, et cetera? Or are your target customers individuals because you're handling, family immigrant? Maybe it's both. A lot of people work with also, immigration firms handle all sorts of different type of clients. So I think thinking about your target customers is important because then you can figure out where you want to go with your marketing. For example, if your target customer is a corporate, your digital marketing strategy might heavily rely on LinkedIn. It might heavily rely on Google search, right? So long form blog posts, et cetera. And I guess YouTube as well, because YouTube shows up on Google results. It might be thought leadership pieces that you pitch to industry magazines, et cetera. It might be a podcast because professionals listen to podcasts. So that's one thing, versus if you're going to be targeting individuals, you might be on Instagram, you might be on TikTok, you might be more on Facebook, right? YouTube as well. I mean, individuals search through regular means, but there are ways to sort of tweak your strategy depending on whether you have a corporate or a individual client, if we're talking about your target customers to grow your business. Okay, so now you have your goals in mind: growth of brand, growth of business, growth of team, maybe you just, whatever your other goal might be, and you have your target customer in mind if there is that business growth as part of that. I think now is where you can start talking about budget. So I wanted to get through that before we talk about how do you figure out how much money to spend. Once you figure out those first two things, the goal and the target customer, you could then look at what your marketing strategy should be, right? So is it going to be LinkedIn advertisements or Facebook ads or Google ads? Is it going to be hiring somebody to write, weekly long form articles that go on your blog and go on, that could be searched on Google? Is it going to be creating YouTube videos with you, the founder or someone on your team as the talking head, giving updates or giving information, and then having some team edit that, or something? Is it going to be, any number of other kind of platforms that you might not be super comfortable with, like maybe a TikTok or an Instagram, and you're trying to make funny and cool videos, and maybe you need to hire somebody to help you with that, right? A teenager, perhaps.
Kid.
So I think once you think through that, you can consider what budget you want to set aside for marketing. And obviously it's going to depend on where your business is, right? You don't want to overstretch yourself on marketing. I think the most important thing you can do is just stay afloat first and foremost. And then if you have additional resources, you can put that towards marketing for future growth. So I would say do what's comfortable for you, because you can really get away with stuff for cheap or even for free.
Yeah.
Talk about how you could do this also as a small firm if you're not going to hire anybody, if you're not going to, get any sort of outside expertise. But I wanted to take a pause there and say, does that make sense so far in terms of budgeting?
To me, it makes sense. What do you think?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, to me, in terms of budgeting, I would feel like if I was a small firm, I do, very small firm, I would not hire anybody because I'm very stingy. I don't want to spend money on that sort of thing. And I would rather want my employees to be enthusiastically posting and sharing all of the cool stuff that I was doing. But I don't know how to, what is the best way of doing that? Because I also would not want my employees to be kind of robotically posting stuff that I had written for them, because I think that's a bit obvious and a bit empty. But I also wouldn't expect my employees or my colleagues to have a bunch of time to be like constantly. And in fact, honestly, as an employer, if my employees were constantly posting like thought-provoking pieces about articles they'd read or written, I'd be a bit like, why have you got time for all of this? So it feels like a bit of a push-pull, like if you, I don't know what you.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I think also when you work in a small firm, you need to be multitasking.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you work for big firms, you have only one task and you have to do it in a perfect way. And you don't have to think about other things. But when it comes to like small firms, like I work every day in contact with my boss, with the company owner. Yeah. So if I have an idea, I have also the opportunity to talk to him directly. And this doesn't happen in the big firms, right? So, and I think this also helps us being multitasking. But the issue is like we have ideas then, but we don't have the skills. Yeah. But is the company interested in hiring someone like internally, or is the company interested like maybe to contact an external agency, maybe for a brief, I don't know, just to give us some guidelines. But the problem, I think, with the marketing, because we actually talk with some agencies, but the problem is that they don't really know.
They don't understand, right?
Our services, our clients, what we want to do. So they give us like a general guidelines that they are valid, but also I think those suggestions work just on this moment. like, because all the algorithm they change, so you need to adapt to this new stuff. So I think it's quite difficult for us that we're not marketing specialists, but somehow I think we need to get used to it and start like getting informed with this.
Yeah, it's a hard debate, right? How much time do you spend on this if you're going to be doing it in addition to other things? I mean, in a way, that's my issue too, right? I mean, I run here, Lena. I agree with you. Spending too much time on marketing takes away from time doing great work, right? So,
Exactly.
let me address this point. Let me address this point quickly. Then, number one, as you work, if you're working at a small firm and it's you doing the marketing in addition to other things, I think you should create a plan for yourself and allocate some time during the week so that it becomes part of your work and isn't just something extra that you have to do. So if you're going to post something on LinkedIn once a week, do it on Wednesday, 10 o'clock in the morning, your local time, allocate an hour to do it, create the thing and post it up, and then, sort of do some follow-up engagement with the people there. And then that way you're doing your marketing, but it doesn't feel like it's disrupting other things because you're giving it the time that it deserves, right? I think the flip side of it is hiring somebody who is going to be doing it from the outside can be, it can be helpful, of course, but then it's a money spent from the firm side. So you're going to be spending something. You're either spending your time or you're spending your money. And the calculus there is what's more valuable to you. If you know that you have a ton of work and if you don't get to it, you're going to lose a client or what have you, then you should be hiring somebody, because the idea is that you probably have, hopefully have the money, or you figure out hire somebody who's really junior. And even though they're going to not do it perfectly, at least they're doing something and you can afford them and then they can learn over time. If you don't have the money, but you have the time and you're not as busy or what have you, then you could spend your time learning a little bit about each, about the platform or whatever medium you want to use, and kind of go for it that way. But you're always going to have to spend something. I mean, from my perspective, if you're thinking about marketing, that means you're at a place where you think that your referral is not enough, or that your one client that's bringing you in all the money is starting to feel scary because you're relying too much. Too many eggs are in one basket. Whatever it might be for you. I think just for small businesses, it feels scary to spend, is what I've realized. A lot of times companies do have the money, they just don't. They're nervous spending it. There's just this idea of like, I want to hold on to my money because it's precious, and if I get rid of it, it's going to go away. It's the same reason people don't spend on personal development in their personal lives. They're just afraid to part with money. And I think once you can like sort of deal with that relationship with your money, whether it's personal or in your business, it's just easier because you know that it's going to come back to you if you're doing all the right things, and it's easier to go out there and try and spend on something. Whether it's hiring somebody or whether it's doing it yourself and spending on advertisements or maybe a course to learn more about marketing, etc. Once you do that, it's going to benefit you and it's going to come back to you eventually. But yeah, it is a challenge to think about which, where do you put your time and how do you spend it wisely, as Lena said.
What I would do actually is I think I would be quite tempted to spend some money and some time on training. If I had a small team, so I had a company that had like 20 to 50 employees, so not tiny, but small, maybe I would spend my time on training my employees and on allowing them, like gifting them an hour a week, say, to, maybe a couple of hours a week, like go and do a little bit of research, find a little bit of thing. This is now a part of your job. Do a training session for them, like allow them, because it's so good for them as well to raise their individual profiles. Like employees should want to do this stuff, but it's really hard when you're also doing, casework every single day. It's hard to kind of tear yourself away from that stuff. But maybe that would be
the one thing I would say too is, there's so many different ways to go about this. Number one, I mean, you mentioned earlier, Sophie, the idea of having your employees share whatever you do, right? Yeah. That means that you are posting something first, potentially. Yeah. If that's what I'm imagining, where you share something and then your employees go and reshare it, that means it's taking both your time and their time, right? Yeah. And the question is like, what is them sharing it going to get? Do they have, how many followers do they have? Where are they? If we're talking about social media, What are they writing where they share it? Because the algorithms don't necessarily care that you share something. They care what engagement your post gets. This is actually a large issue with sharing on LinkedIn. A lot of people share stuff on LinkedIn, but they don't write anything. They just share someone else's post or article or whatever, and it gets zero engagement. Why? Because they're
that. Yeah. If I share a thing, like somebody else's thing, it gets like 10 people are like, oh, great. Right. And if I write a thing, even if it's quite boring, then it's much more.
My recommendation there is always, if you are going to share something, you should write some additional piece of content of your own. Why are you sharing it? What about the thing that you're sharing interests you? Why do you think you should be sharing it to your audience? What will they learn from it that they, would have otherwise learned if they saw this initial thing directly, right? So you got to add something to it. I think, you made the interesting point of, you work with agencies or what have you, and they give you information that's really just current now because it's, the algorithm du jour, and once it changes, their tactics fail. I think that can definitely be the case with maybe paid advertising, although I guess organic content too. But my suspicion, and this is, I guess, my philosophy too, is as we move forward, these platforms get more and more sophisticated, and their end goal is always to give the most amount of people the best content most consistently, right? And so I think at the very end of the day, yes, there are tactics and tips and tricks on how to make your content very effective, whether it's on YouTube or on LinkedIn or a blog post. But as long as it's good, right, genuinely good, I think that is going to be the thing that's most powerful, right? Like as long as you are putting out something that is interesting to people, it's easy to read, because remember, people who are reading it also have jobs, and so they can't allocate 3 hours of their time on social media. So you need something that's quick and it's, maybe in bite-sized chunks or what have you. It entertains them and educates them and brings value to them. That's the most important thing. If you just keep doing that every single day, I would care less about the algorithm and what platform and whatnot, and just put out great content. And, people will start to gravitate towards it at a very, very basic level.
So I guess then, what is the definition of good? Is good is something that helps people, that provides them some knowledge that they didn't have before. Like, what is good?
Well, it's a great question. What is good depends on your audience, right? What is good for one person isn't good for the other person. So my question there would be, who is your audience? Again, right, to go back to and what are your goals? If your goal, for example, is to become a thought leader in the space, right, and show people how much knowledge you have, then I would say that really good content there would be maybe in-depth research articles or something that shows your, right? If your goal is to get as many followers as you possibly can, regardless of your industry, maybe, then you could just put out videos of puppies and things, stuff that anybody can relate to, and it'll make them smile for 30 seconds. And then you can, follow me for more puppy content, right? And things like that. So I think good is relative. And I know that that's a really lawyerly and not very impactful answer, but I think it does there's no quick, easy response. If you really want to make marketing work for you, you have to sit down and think about, again, what are my goals? Who is my target audience, whether it's clients, partners, employees, etc. And once you figure that out, then you can start to, because imagine, okay, let's go through that analysis. You're an immigration law firm in Italy, and your target audience is Italian Italian-based companies that are trying to bring folks into Italy, right, from an immigration standpoint. So you're an inbound immigration firm, and your client is corporates, right? You want to write content that is going to grab the attention of an HR person or the founder or whoever it is that you work with in Italy, right? So maybe your content could be in Italian, for example, because that's who your target market is. Maybe you can write about something specific to a particular city where companies are based, right? That is going to grab the attention of these people, and challenges that they might be having with immigration. Like, I don't know, are you facing challenges bringing people into northern Italy? Well, here's 5 ways to get the best international talent to your company in North Italy. Number 1, talk about how great the Alps are and how great of a lifestyle they'll have. Number 2, it's not as crowded as Rome. I don't know. Number 3, the food's different, right? Like, whatever it might be, right? So give them information that will make their job easier. right? And thereby you're providing them with value, or you can give them immigration tips or things like that.
Yeah.
What
I think it's I mean, so I was I mean, we were talking about this the other day, right? I spend my life posting stuff that is about actually this really relates to Ben's question about professional versus personal self. So I always on LinkedIn my entire life, I've only ever either created or shared content which is specifically about immigration, because in my mind LinkedIn is for work, and for me work is immigration. So I post stuff about EU blue cards or work permit updates, or I don't know, Chinese visas or whatever, you know. But recently I've been a bit busy working on some things, and I didn't really have much kind of actual immigration stuff that I felt qualified to share. So I posted two different things. One, a picture of some paintings that I had done. Two, a picture of my shoes, which I had bought and not used because of lockdown. So, and I was like, should I wear these shoes to a meeting or not? And my shoes, both of these posts have had over 5,000 views. The shoes ones had like 7,000 and about a bazillion comments. And I feel both pleased and delighted that my lovely friends and other people on LinkedIn are interested in my paintings and my shoes, but also, like, honestly, a bit sort of sad that clearly my professional content is so inferior. And also, like, does it matter? Like, is it even a good thing? You know, I'm like, oh look, 7,000 people looked at my picture of my shoes, but like, is that of any benefit or value to anybody? I mean, should all of the immigration lawyers and all of the global mobility experts and all of the founders and people like Lena and all of these amazing people that we know and love watching this now, should they all be posting pictures of their houses and their shoes and their, you know, what book they're reading and stuff? I mean, is that what we should be doing?
Yes.
You know,
short answer to that is yes. And to Ben's question, I think it's just human nature for us to want to. I can't see myself there. I think it's human nature for us to want to connect with other human beings. And remember, people are buying from you as a service provider, as a human being, right? Even if you're a large company, even if you're the largest company in the world, people are going to go to you if they feel somehow connected to you. So really large companies have a difficult time of personifying themselves as like an individual, or have, you know, they're trying to create a personality, but they can't because they're corporate, so it's really hard.
yeah.
Really clever companies do a great job of giving themselves attributes, almost human attributes. The corporate, you have that benefit of actually being a human being and a very small company, and your personal attributes are trickled down into the, you know, into the business. And so putting that forward is amazing for business development. It's amazing for branding. It's not that people need to know about your shoes. It's about the fact that people know about things that you're thinking about, or what you care about, or how you think, outside of just regurgitating facts and news that other people are already talking about. That is uniquely inherent to you, right? Or actually, I should say, it's inherently unique to you, that other people, you know, and no one else is having that shoe question, right, with that same exact pair of shoes or whatnot. On the other hand, even though it's very unique to you, you're exhibiting a sort of a human behavior, and that anybody could relate to. So I don't have that issue because I didn't buy any shoes during COVID, right? But like I can empathize with your idea of like, this is something I did for myself to prepare for life pre-COVID. Now things have changed, so I put myself in a, you know, I've done something else, you know, for pre-COVID, and now it's different. And so I can answer the question without having the exact same, you know, conundrum as you, but still connect with you on a human level. And I think that, to me, is the most important thing. And by the way, you know, to Ben's question, do you put it on Instagram, LinkedIn, you know, wherever? I think personal information, or information about you as a human being, can be relevant anywhere, because anywhere human beings are, they want to feel alive, right? So why do YouTubers become so popular? Because it's them, it's their face, right? It's their face on video, and the best YouTubers are the ones that have the most personality. I mean, why was Trump so popular, even though objectively a lot of times what he was saying maybe wasn't the smartest or didn't make the most sense? He was so charismatic. He went off script, and I actually, you know, enjoyed watching him sometimes go off script. I thought it was funny. Like, he knows how to work a crowd. I know that's an extreme example, but the idea is that you want to remind people
real.
You're real. Exactly.
Yeah.
And by the way, remember that your LinkedIn profile has a lot of information about you professionally, where you work, where you went to school, what you do, what your skills are, maybe what languages you speak, etc. So I think that once you get people onto your LinkedIn profile, from a LinkedIn perspective, it's a website. From a website perspective, it's Instagram page. Let the profile do the talking, but you have to pull them in with something perhaps more enticing than just another news update.
Yeah, you're right. So it's about what we were talking about at the very beginning, about personal connections and making those connections. And actually the number of people that I talk to now, and this may just be because I'm aged and getting somewhat demented, but the amount of people I talk to who are like, oh, we know one another. And I'm like, do we? And I'm sure I actually, and then I get to know them and I usually really, really like them. But it's because people feel like they know me better than, I don't even realize that people think that, because I'm constantly gabbing on the internet, basically. So Renee, I didn't wear the shoes yet because it's next week, this meeting, so I still have to decide. But my little toes, like, just to segue into my feet, are so happy after a year and a half of no pointy shoes. So I don't know what to do. Still haven't decided. But I think I have to wear them now that 7,000 people saw that I planned on it. Actually, we've got another question here that I want to show from Ricardo. So, hi, Ricardo. So this is the same sort of thing. Like, should you be integrating your website? Because you can take, so this actually relates to the first stuff we were talking about also, right? How do you allocate your time and resources? Like, you can use a kind of Hootsuite type thing or some kind of thing that just sends it out to everything. Is that a good idea? So that you're
again, I think it depends on your goals. What I love about the way that I work on social media is that I focus on just a few platforms and I create content specifically for those platforms because I want engagement. I want to make the personal connections with the people who see and like my stuff. Other companies don't have that goal. Other companies have a great system set up for developing business, but they know that they have to have a presence, because if somebody's going to be working for them, or if a client sees them, a prospective client sees them somewhere and then they go and look them up on Facebook, they want to make sure to have content that's fresh, not necessarily content that's engaging. So if you have a profile on 6 different platforms and you create content and you spit it out onto all those platforms and you don't care about any of those platforms particularly performing well from an engagement standpoint, I think that's totally fine. But I think if you care, right? So for me as a small, let's bring this back to small businesses. I think for a small business, you don't need to be on every platform, right? You're small. You can only handle a certain amount of business. I say niche down, find the platform, if you're talking social media, that works best for you. For example, do you like writing content? Do you like recording videos? Do you like short things? Do you like long things, right? Maybe are you much more visual? So once you decide on that, then you can figure out which platform is best for you and really just kind of live on there, right? I mean, look, the way that I look at just social media is that any one of these platforms is basically a 24/7 marketing networking event. I mean, that's what I say about LinkedIn, but frankly, it's the same on any platform. If you go to a networking event, you have to be present. You have to talk to people. You have to give your card out. You have to take people's cards and actually call them up afterwards and email them in order to get value. Otherwise, you're spending $1,000 on a conference and you're not going to get anything out of it. It's the same thing with LinkedIn. You can't just show up and throw your card around, and leave it on the floor and then walk out and expect people to pick it up and call you. It's not going to happen. They're only going to call the people who they've maybe had a pizza with, or they walked out of a conference, session with and talked for 2 minutes. Right? You have to allocate the time and energy in real life. You have to do it on social media. So if you're a small business and you want to get better at marketing, you don't want to spend a lot of time, and especially if you don't want to spend a lot of money, just tell yourself that you are going to be present on a platform or through a medium, right? And actually spend the time, read the comments on other articles and reply to them, right? And then connect those people, right? Put out your post and reply to people who comment on it. Really be engaged in the space. I mean, we think of LinkedIn as this fake thing, but there are professionals from all around the world sitting and spending their living, breathing hours on it. And so when you interact with someone on there, interact with them with the same level of respect and the same level of professionalism and care that you would if you saw them at an ERC conference, right? Or a SHRM conference, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's I have personally, I keep talking you. I'm going to stop interrupting all the time because you never get a chance to say anything. But I have really valued LinkedIn in the last year and a half because I do miss people. I miss my friends, and that's what I love about our industry is that you know people everywhere. You know, I love it, and I've always felt kind of honoured and humbled to be able to just pick up the phone, like back in the day. Obviously now I don't phone anybody, you know, but to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody in, you know, Ghana. I think Pa's watching. Hi, Pa. But, you know, to be able to call somebody in Ghana or in, you know, Senegal or in Switzerland or, you know, wherever, you know, I mean, it's amazing to have that connection to so many people who know so much and are so knowledgeable. And yeah, we're used to meeting those people in person, talking to them in person. But I think on LinkedIn and through digital media is a pretty close runner up, if not as good, maybe sometimes. So Renee had a question about driving sales opportunities through content. I mean, that's yeah. I think this is the thing we're talking about, right?
Trying to find the any suggestions? I mean, Renee, I off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what, you know, again, I would always go back to goals. You can't give suggestions unless you know what the goals are. So I think if you want to drive in sales through your content, you have to drive engagement through your content. And if you in order to drive engagement through your content, you have to have good content that is valuable to the person who's receiving it. And remember, value is subjective. Sometimes it could be funny. Sometimes it could be emotional. Sometimes it could be purely factual. Sometimes it could be personal about you, right? All these things create value, and engage with the people who engage with your content. If someone likes your content, I mean, this is what I tell all of my clients, anyone I work with. If you put out content and it's doing well, like Sophie, let's use your shoe post example, right? I'm sure that some of the people who commented, and especially who liked your post, are not direct connections to you. They may have seen your post through someone else, right? Are they an HR person? Are they an immigration or mobility person? Are they a relocation person? If they are, reach out and connect with them, right? Send them a little note when you are connecting with them and say, hey, thanks so much for liking my post. I know it was a silly one about shoes, but you know, I saw that you're also in the immigration space. I'd love to connect with you. So now you've actually created a relationship or created a connection with that person, nurture that, right, through LinkedIn or through wherever. And then if and when it makes sense, then you could pitch the sell, right? And that, by the way, the likelihood of that person, if it makes sense, to actually agree to work with you is much, much higher, because now they feel like they know you, they know your value, they know that you're, you know, you can actually deliver, etc. They trust you. And so the likelihood of them working with you is much higher.
That is the thing, right? Like, people will trust you if they know you, and people feel like they know you if you post pictures of your shoes. I mean, you know, this is an oversimplification, but it's true. I mean, there's no reason just because I post a funny picture of my shoes that I'm a good, I mean, I am a very trustworthy and good immigration professional, but like, you wouldn't know that. But yet, just I think we are wired as human beings to trust the familiar, right? So if people feel like they know you, then they trust you, and if they trust you, then they're going to be much more likely to, especially possibly in the kind of services, and maybe even more in the legal services industry, where if it goes wrong, it's such an absolute nightmare, you know?
And by the way, Sophie, I just want to throw in something that might be a little bit of a mind bend. Nobody cares if you're a good immigration lawyer. All they care about is that you're, well, hold on. All they care about is that you're a sufficient immigration lawyer. You just have work done. And by the way, nobody sells themselves as a sufficient immigration lawyer. They sell themselves as a good or the best immigration lawyer, but everyone knows that you're not the best. They know that you're really good among hundreds or thousands of others. So therefore, the idea that you're good inherently does not differentiate you. My view is get away from talking about how good of a practitioner you are. Not that you do, but in general, people, you know, they out #1 rated in AVO. Well, guess what? A ton of people are #1 rated in these things. Like, you pay them money and they put you on the list. We're not stupid. Everyone knows that, right? Get away from selling yourself based on these like accolades that don't really show how good of a practitioner you are, and start selling yourself based on the personality traits that you have, what you love and what you do, etc. I mean, I want to use your example earlier about you talked to some agencies and you're like, they don't know what we do, right? So you probably reached out to them because they're a marketing agency. Maybe you know that they've gotten results for clients in the past, etc. But when you spent your time talking to them, you realize that they don't really understand maybe the industry as well. And so you realize now, okay, well, we can't just pass this off to you. We're going to have to spend time teaching you first and actually going over your stuff. And you're like, I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to move forward with it. Right now, imagine, I mean, literally, this is why I do what I do with GMI Rocket. Right. I mean, imagine you came to someone, they're like, no, I know exactly what you do. I know your industry. I understand you. I understand the difficulties you have. I got it. Isn't that exactly what you want? Right. In fact, I will tell you this, you'd probably be more lenient with that person as a service provider because you know that they understand you and you're willing to, you can work with each other. You don't have to teach them and educate them. So you as
Yes, exactly. Actually, however, there was something very positive thing that I had, very positive experience that I had with them, with these marketing agencies, that as they didn't know anything about our services. I understood that maybe sometimes we communicate people information that they're not interested in.
Yeah,
it's important for us. We consider it important, but for them, that it's not important.
Yeah, we're like, oh, look at the posted worker notification rules, and they're like, oh.
yes, they're very extremely important, but they don't care about it. Maybe so when we post, we also, I think, need to think about what they want to listen. What are they interested in? Maybe it's not something important for us. For us, it might be something very obvious, but it's not. Maybe for clients, they want to need that simple thing.
Yeah. I think, when I was selling my software, my immigration software, when I owned my company Peregrine, I was much more successful with other immigration lawyers and practitioners than I was with corporate. I mean, I did have corporate clients, but not so many. And it was because I'm such a geek and I was constantly going on about the tiny little bits of legislation that I had filtered through and spent hours and hours pulling out tiny little bits and pieces. And the only other people who cared about that or thought it was cool were other geeky immigration people who were like, oh, this is amazing. But there aren't that many of those people. The clients, the real clients, the corporate clients, all they wanted to know was like, how fast is it and how cheap is it or how expensive is it? And that's all. They didn't really care about whether, you can actually submit this certificate instead of this other certificate, like turns out, surprisingly, people don't really care about that stuff.
Well, let me go back to one of your earlier questions, and jump off this topic that you're talking about right now. I think number one, you actually already have great content that people care about, and number two, you don't have to spend any money on it. So if you're a small business, a solo practitioner, whatever in the industry, one of the best ways to create content is actually to look back on what you've provided to your existing or past clients, strip away any confidential information, of course, and then share those tips, provide those answers, whatever, to the world at large. Because unless it's about a specific individual case, but a lot of times clients also have bigger questions, a program, hey, we're trying to expand into this country. What do we do? Hey, we're trying to add this type of position. Do you think it's eligible for a visa? Whatever. That's not specific to an individual. It's a question that other people who are similarly situated might have. And you've answered them, by the way, in an email, in your professionally worded email or phone call or newsletter that you send, whatever it might be, right? Take that information and turn that into content. Great way to turn that into content. And it's free. You've done it.
Yeah, that is an amazing tip for employees as well, because I'm still hung up on this thing, like as an employer or as an individual or as a kind of person who's more visible, like it's quite easy. But how do you get your colleagues? But you could say, like, as an employer of a small number of employees, you could say to them, when you're writing an email to a client, when you're providing some advice to a client, think about whether this is universally applicable, and then let us help you, let our marketing person or our, somebody in the company help you anonymize it and sort of make it a little bit more generic. And then you can post it and we can all, that would be a cool thing to do, I think. Yeah.
Exactly. You can also look at your clients as avatars, and you can go on and say, hey, are you a mid-sized fashion company in Italy and you're trying to bring in a fashion designer from around the world? Here's how that works from an immigration standpoint, right? And you just talk through what you've done with your existing client who's a fashion company in Italy. I don't know, I'm just assuming here, right? And if there are 5, 10, 20, 100 other fashion companies that care about that information, that's going to be super valuable to them. Right? It's very specific information, but it's based on something you've already done. It talks to an audience very directly. And by the way, if they're ever going to go for an immigration attorney, they're going to go for you probably because you've spoken to them directly rather than just being a generic immigration office.
Yeah. And should you, like, actually, I have a question about that. Should you be using the hashtags? Like, should you be like hashtag fashion, hashtag Italy fashion? Like, is that, because I don't understand hashtags. I just use them as a sort of meta comment. Hashtag too old for this, hashtag don't really know what I'm doing about hashtags.
So but I think early on, so hashtags are a way to categorize information, right? You can search a hashtag on the search bar on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, etc. And basically what that does is it provides a feed of all content tagged with that hashtag, right? So when you're using hashtags for, purposefully for marketing content, think about who is searching for or who follows already that particular hashtag. So for example, if you are, if you want to say fashion, if you want to appeal to fashion companies, what are fashion companies researching? Like if they're on, maybe they're following hashtag fashion. They're probably not following hashtag immigration, right? Because they don't have consistent immigration problems. They're not going to follow. They're not going to look up, but they might have consistent fashion questions or tips or want to see what thought leaders are posting, or maybe they're doing it themselves. And so if you post an immigration tip for the fashion community and you use hashtag fashion, as long as that content screams out to them. So it's like, hey, are you a fashion designer and you want to bring in a textile professional from another country? Here's the visa that you need for them. Sorry if there's noise outside behind me. Here's the information that you need, and you use hashtag fashion. That's going to get in front of the right people. So to me, that's probably the best way to use a hashtag. Another thing that you can do is you can create your own almost custom hashtag that nobody else is using. So maybe like Sophy King says a thing, hashtag Sophy King says a thing, right? That's going to be your daily musings, for example. No one's using that, most likely. But what happens is you can then, probably, but you can then, every time you post something, you use that hashtag in addition to some of the other ones that are really specific to the industry, or the industry that you want to get in front of. And then you can encourage people to follow your specific hashtag. Then it turns you into sort of an influencer, right? Because people just want to hear everything Sophy says. And so they're going to go and follow that hashtag. They're always going to get your updates. That's another kind of clever way of using it. I don't really recommend that unless you want to become an influencer with hundreds of thousands of followers, et cetera, because, you don't need that to build a business, right? That's going to be your business. Yeah, but that's just another way of using it. But I think my recommendation for hashtags is use a hashtag that's being followed by the industry professionals that you want to get in front of. And by the way, look at how many followers it has. If it has no followers, it's probably not going to be seen by a lot of people. Likewise, if it has, or on the flip side, I should say, if it has 100 million followers, you're going to get swallowed by content that's put out with that hashtag every 2 seconds. So try to find a little sweet spot in the middle.
That's very good advice. That really is good advice. Yeah. You had another question, didn't you? I think we still have time. We've got about 10 minutes.
We already talked about them, but one quick question. So you gave us so many tips for content and also for the marketing strategy. But when we talk about publishing or sharing content on Facebook and LinkedIn or any other platforms, what do you think about the paid campaigns? Do they work for our industry?
So paid ads on LinkedIn, I have done a bunch of, but I think they're very expensive and I haven't found them to be very useful. I don't ever recommend them and I don't do them myself. I think I can get way more engagement via organic content. To be fair, you have to pay for it, or you have to pay for it with your time. But I think the engagement just goes a much, much longer way. Especially, we're talking small businesses here, right? Again, if you're at Microsoft and you just want your name to be in front of people, you're not selling them anything, you just want to keep that name recognition up, throw your money at ads, right? Because it'll get in front of people, but it's not likely to convert. Facebook is a different story. And it also depends, I think, on what your goals are, to go back to it. If you are, I'll give myself as an example. I've run paid ads. I did a digital marketing for immigration conference in March, right? Every session was recorded, and then I turned that into basically a course. So for people who couldn't attend, if they want to see all those videos, it talks about LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, etc. If you want to learn about all these platforms, here's like a course. Effectively, you watch these 6 hours of video or 7 hours of video, and you're going to know a lot more. You're going to feel a lot more comfortable and confident afterwards. I can't sell that on my own to everyone out there who I think would benefit from it. I think thousands of people could benefit from it. So I experimented with some Facebook ads. I made sure that the thing that I was selling to them is directly available via the link, right? Yeah. And I played around with some copy. And, you spend $10 a day or whatever, or $100 a day. And the more money you spend, the more people it gets in front of. And if it hits somebody and they feel like it's interesting to them, they'll click on it and they'll buy right away. In that kind of an instance, I think paid ads make a ton of sense for business development. If you're a service provider, right, and you create a paid advertisement that's going to get in front of 5, 10, 100,000 people, think about what are you going to put in that advertisement? Are you going to tell them, contact us now for a free consultation? Are you going to tell them download this 10-page PDF to answer your basic questions? Do you have something to sell them? Maybe you have nothing to sell them and it's just, hey, sign up for our free newsletter, right? You're just putting them into your funnel via Facebook ad, but you're not actually going to sell them either at the Facebook ad or even immediately after. You're going to sell them down the road. So I think if you have something that you can capture a lot of people with, then Facebook ads probably makes a lot of sense. The other question is, are you B2B or B2C, right? If you're B2B, yes, is the manager of the company that you want to get into your immigration firm also on Facebook? Probably at this day and age, right? But they're there in their personal capacity. And so maybe their mindset is a little bit different. They're not really going to care about these types of things, perhaps, right? Or maybe they are, and it's worth an experiment. It's hard to say, but I think Facebook usually is a little bit more B2C focused, right? So let's say if you're actually just helping individuals come into a country and handle their spousal visa or whatever, then Facebook is definitely your friend because all those people on there are your prospective clients. So that's a really long-winded answer. My recommendation ultimately is if you're a small company and you don't have a lot of money to spend on marketing, I would avoid Facebook ads and I would just spend your time creating content that's genuinely going to help people and put it out on the platform that is best for you and engage and just spend your time, right? Once you hit a place where your time is worth much more than that, then you can hire someone to help you with it. You can put money into advertisements and you can keep your sort of business machine going, kind of automatically. But again, in the beginning, my view is free content and spend your time and start building that way.
Spend your time, and if you're going to spend your money on giving yourself some time, right? Rather than on like a paid campaign, rather spend your money on getting somebody who actually knows what they're doing to help you, or that type of thing. Also for me, if I was going to do a paid campaign, I would definitely want to know what the return on my investment was, and I would want to be able to be quite specific about it. So if I have a particular thing which I'm selling for $500 and I know that I've spent this many dollars on it, and month 1 does this and month 2 does this, then I can sort of hold my nerve for 6 months or something. But if it's just I want people to vaguely know who I am, then it's a bit more tenuous,
Right. And I think if it's just you wanting to know people, that means you have to have discretionary income basically that you can throw away on
and not exactly
right.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a direct ROI on that. There's just going to be the idea that over 2 years you're going to hit 20 million people with your content, and that is good for business because you want to be everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, it has literally been an hour already, which is ridiculous because it feels like 20 minutes. But so I want to summarize. So tell me if I'm summarizing this stuff right. So here's what we've talked about. We talked about budget and marketing. Well, we talked about strategy, and when we talked about strategy, we talked about how you should try and be targeted, right? Try and understand who your customers are and what your goal is and what it actually is that you're trying to do, rather than just being kind of bamboozled by the entire digital space. Try and narrow it down, be specific. Then we talked about budget, and we talked about don't be too scared of spending some money or spending some time. Maybe think about this and take it seriously. Don't be so scared of spending money that you do yourself an injury. And we talked about what else? We talked about my shoes for a long time. We talked about being authentic and being real and that being okay, and it being okay to have a bit of your personality out there, and in fact a good thing. I find that terrifying, but I know it is the way things are going these days. And then we talked about content and what makes good content being real and helpful and useful and valuable to people. Yeah.
You know, Sophie, I just want to mention one thing. You said it's scary to be yourself. You know, I've said this a million times and I'll keep saying it. The most impactful conversations that you probably have at a conference are the ones over a beer or over during a walk or whatever, where you're done talking about the event of the day and you're just like, okay, so where are you from again? Oh, you're from Switzerland. Oh my gosh, I love skiing. I've only been there once. Yeah. And then they're like, oh, you have to go. Have you been? And you have a 20-minute conversation about skiing, right? And then you end up really connecting. And then you can always go back to that sort of like common interest. And by the way, that person is way more likely to refer business to you, become your client, you become their client, et cetera, et cetera. And so think about that. You're sharing something about your skiing with a person at an immigration conference, right? What's the difference between that and posting about your shoes on LinkedIn? Nothing.
This feels a bit show-offy. That's like at a conference, I would talk to someone from Switzerland about skiing, but I wouldn't go and stand on the podium and be like, hey, everyone, I love skiing, you know, and that's what it feels like. But I know it's not really like that, because even though you are talking to the whole world, you're actually talking to individuals one-on-one. I mean, it's not the same. It's not the same. But I think that's why I personally feel a bit weird about it, because I just feel like I don't want to sort of, you know, inflict my interests on the world.
Well, here's something that I'll tell you. When you think about standing on the podium and screaming it, in your head, you probably envision everyone stopping their conversation and turning to you and listening to you and giving you their attention.
And then they're like, what is this nonsense he's on about?
Right. Yeah. LinkedIn, social media is not like that, right?
Yeah.
Social media, you're scrolling through a feed. There are a million conversations happening at the same time.
Yeah, so if you're annoying, they just scroll past, right? So it's fine.
If you're annoying, they scroll past it. Or if you're annoying, they might never see it in the first place because LinkedIn or whatever platform doesn't show it to them, right? So it actually have like its own self-correcting mechanism where if people are genuinely interested in your content and they engage with you, then that gets shared with more people. And then as more people see it and they see that there's a discussion, they have a little bit of FOMO and they think, well, how am I want to get into this discussion too. And it actually perpetuates itself. So I think
you're right.
Worried about that. A lot of I talk to a lot of prospective clients, sometimes even clients, they're like, oh, I don't want to post. Let's do post once a month. I don't want to be too annoying people. And I'm like, you don't even understand how little you mean on the internet. You think you posting once every day is annoying people. Trust me, they're not going to see it. Right. What you're doing is you're giving yourself more data by putting out a content every day rather than once a month. You're getting more data about what content resonates. You could learn more quickly and therefore iterate and start putting out the best content that you know does well. Forget about them, right? It's funny because it's both being self-conscious. It's also this like ego thing where you think that everyone's going to listen to you.
Exactly. It's like, I don't want to, it's like, they're not listening to you anyway. So
I'll be honest with you. Nobody really cares. You're not a celebrity. And if you were a celebrity, you wouldn't have to worry about this in the first place. So just do the thing, put it out there, get your name out there, get your brand out there, get your content out there, see how people start reacting to it. And then sort of have that. Right now you have nothing. So you're going to put a lot of stuff out there that's not going to work, that's not going to resonate, that might feel weird, that might feel, good. And then you're going to start narrowing it down to kind of what works and then go in that direction.
Yeah. Awesome. I think we've got to finish. There are a couple of questions popping up on LinkedIn, but maybe we have to answer them in like chat later because like we can't go. Should we have time? We love Par.
Yeah,
Par is my favorite. So let's quickly talk about this one.
Let's answer this question quickly and then we'll call it a day. Does giving free consultations on social media help in generating business? I think it depends on the extent of the consultation. I think for me, when I create content, it is in effect a free consultation because I'm talking to a lot of specific people with every piece of content I create on something they can do. Right.
Right now.
Yeah. Right. If someone reaches out to me and says, hey, Roman, I have a couple questions, I will usually help them. But I think that it's up to you as the professional to know what your need is for work. If you need a lot of work, you're probably more likely to spend time giving away free information because you want to really give them a lot to then guilt them into buying from you. Right. If you don't need a lot of work, you're probably more likely to turn them away or rather turn them towards a paid consultation. So I think you can also balance that with what you need. But from my perspective, again, you're building trust. So if you can give someone, heaps of value quickly and easily through a direct message or through if they ask you something in a comment and on your post. I think give it away. It's not going to hurt you. And it's going to make them think, wow, this person's really helpful to me. It's never going to be enough to solve their actual question, number one, right? And if it is, they wouldn't be a good client anyway because their question was really simple, right?
Yeah.
So you want to give them enough information to show them that you have the expertise and to give them value. But of course, eventually you can funnel them into like, hey, look, I think there's like, here's a couple of quick tips I would give you about your case or from my perspective about your marketing presence, what have you. And you give them the tips and you say, I think there's a lot you can actually do with your firm. I think there's a lot of these. So if you want to work together, I'd love to go through this with you and, or whatever. In your case, like here are a couple of quick things I know based on where you're from and what kind of job you got. But as you can imagine, it's complicated. So if you really want help with your immigration case, let's set up a consultation and let's actually go into more detail. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that can build a little bit more trust that can eventually lead to more business.
Actually, this is the best advice I got when I first set up on my own. Somebody said, when you go in to meet a client, go in consulting. Like, don't go in and do a sales pitch. Go in as a consultant and instantly start helping them, whether they're paying you or not. And then if you're good and you're helpful, then they'll want to. And it's no different, I think, going to a meeting from how it would be on LinkedIn.
Exactly.
Like, you want to be helpful, and then if they're a good client, like you say, then they're going to come back with more stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've now gone over time. It was so, Rowan, you're amazing. Thank you so much. And you're amazing for having this idea in the first place. Like, totally, and thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And for anyone who's watching who I'm not connected with, let's connect. I'll be happy to answer any more questions. Free content. Any more questions, please reach out.
All right. Thanks, guys. Speak to you soon.
Thank you all.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.